catch yourself spiraling over something small, like a bug in your bathroom, and suddenly you're convinced your whole life is about to fall apart? That's not just anxiety, it's a cognitive distortion, and ADHD brains are especially prone to them. In this episode, we're diving into the 7 most common cognitive distortions that ADHD women struggle with, why they happen, and how to catch them before they hijack your day. You'll walk away with a clearer understanding of your own thought patterns and practical tools to shift them so you can focus, feel better, and get back to what actually matters. Be sure to listen.
Welcome to the Self-Loved ADHD Woman's Way podcast. I'm your host, Jen Barnes. If you're an ADHD woman entrepreneur, ADHD adjacent, or ADHD-ish, you've come to the right place. We'll dive deep into the unique challenges you face, from the inner turmoil to the outer obstacles. We'll blend neuroscience, IFS, and somatic healing, and explore practical strategies to help you navigate the world of entrepreneurship with ADHD with greater ease and effectiveness. I'm glad you're here.
Hey, it's Jen. I'm so glad you're here. So today I'm going to start with a story because we're going to get into the 7 most common cognitive distortions that ADHD women fall into and then that keep them super stuck. But I'm going to start with a story about one I noticed in myself this morning, which was the inspiration for this podcast. So over the Memorial Day weekend, I was up at my family cabin on a lake in Minnesota. It's what a lot of us Minnesotans do. And I got back and everything seemed fine. And by the way, it's wood tick season here. I don't know if it is elsewhere. I'm assuming it is. And so this morning I was going to the bathroom and I saw what looked like a dead wood tick, but it wasn't flat. And I was like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. So I started panicking that it's a wood tick because I've had a couple clients who had chronic Lyme disease, which was so debilitating and awful. I get really paranoid about that. So I'm like, oh my gosh, it looks like it had blood. It's not flat. So maybe there's blood in it. Maybe it was sucking on me or my cat. Oh my gosh. So I'm panicking, right? Unable to access any nervous system regulation skills or awareness that I needed it. And then immediately start catastrophizing about how this is going to be my life now. I'm going to get Lyme, like just going down into all the awfulness of it. Or my cat's going to get Lyme and then she's going to die. And then I'll only have the one who doesn't do as well without her sister. And you get it, right? Does this sound familiar? If it does, that is actually a cognitive distortion that is super common with ADHD women. Lots of people do cognitive distortions, but these are the ones that are super common for ADHD women. And catastrophizing makes the top 7 because a lot of us, in my mind, we observe everything, right? It's not that we can't pay attention. It's that we're attending to so much in our environment. So we don't miss much unless we're in a hyper focus, then we miss all kinds of things. But a lot of times we're paying attention to so much in our environment that we pick up on everything. And some of us have got really sticky brains, so we hold on to stuff, right? Like I remember all this stuff with my clients and their Lyme and how terrible it was. And one of them didn't have the bullseye, so I could have it and not know. And you see how quickly it spirals. And I think what makes this particularly challenging for us is because we are highly creative and impulsive. So that combination lends itself to us quickly going into that spiral, scanning all the things that we've ever experienced and noticed, attended to, and then all of a sudden catastrophizing, like making it like the worst case scenario. And instead of having that be a skill, like, okay, well, if this happened, what would I do? We ruminate about it and we spiral. And then this morning, instead of being able to meditate and do my morning writing, I was Googling all these things about ticks and what if it's this and what if it's that? And I wasn't finding anything. And so I did get my workout in, so that was good. But then after my workout, I was almost late to my morning productivity power hour that I do in my program Ascend, which I'm almost always late to. But anyway, I made it and then no one showed up. So I'm sitting there Googling what else it could be and decided to give ChatGPT the photo and see if we could figure it out. All this to say, after about 2 hours of freaking out and panicking and catastrophizing And I even made a doctor's appointment in there at one point, tried to call the nurse's line, but couldn't get a hold. Anyway, long story, doesn't matter. I gave it to ChatGPT, and when I gave the information with an image next to a coin, ChatGPT was like, oh yeah, that's not a tick, that's a wood spider. That's a dead wood spider. And I was like, awesome. So then I started Googling wood spiders, and sure enough, that is exactly what they look like when they're dead. However, wood spiders also have 8 legs, which is why I was spiraling. But you can see it turned out okay. And this was just a quick, short example that I was able to find a solution for pretty quickly. So this didn't bother me for days, weeks, months, or years. But a lot of times our ADHD brains, because of their stickiness, we can ruminate on something like this. We can catastrophize. And the problem with that is when we do that, then we're like just riddled with anxiety and fear. And as my little story demonstrates, we don't get to do the things we need to do that will not only help us feel better, but actually do our work. So today we're going to talk about what we do with these 7 common cognitive distortions in ADHD women. There are other cognitive distortions, but these are the top 7 for ADHD women, according to ChatGPT. At any rate, so I want to break these down and talk about them because they show up and they can wreak havoc. And don't get me wrong, we come by this honestly. I know no one is trying to sit there and think of the worst and spiral like that. That's not fun. And that's why I want to shine a light on this. And then after we talk about all 7 of them, I'm going to share what to do when you're in one of these cognitive distortion spirals. So we already talked about catastrophizing. That's basically building everything up to be the worst possible scenario without the added intervention then of saying, okay, well, if that did happen, what would I do? Instead, just spiraling on that. Another common cognitive distortion is all or nothing thinking. So this can be like, if I can't do it perfectly, I shouldn't do it all. Or if you're trying to start exercising every day, if you can't exercise for an hour, you're not going to bother. Or if you want to meditate, if you're like, heard my recommendation of starting with 1 minute of mindfulness, and you're thinking that won't do anything. Well, no, but it'll build the habit. But again, if you're like, well, it won't do anything, so I'm not going to do it, that you either go big or you go home. And that's the all or nothing thinking. That's so common with ADHD. And again, other people do this too, but we tend to do it even more after years of criticism and complaint or masking to avoid it. So then we don't do it unless we can do it perfectly, right? It's got that sneaky cousin or close sibling, or maybe more like a parasitic lamprey or something like that. I don't know, of perfectionism attached to it. Another common cognitive distortion that ADHD women experience is overgeneralization. Overgeneralization is I always, or this always happens. I always screw this up. This always happens this way. And basically, overgeneralization is viewing setbacks like as evidence of permanent personality or personal flaws. And so it's not effective, obviously. And again, I get why we do it, but it just makes us more stuck because then we're essentially just beating ourselves up over and over again inside. And that is not a helpful way to do the things that you're trying to do now. If you're listening to this podcast, you are likely an entrepreneur, or maybe you're a professional woman in a career, and you're going bigger than you ever have before at this point in your life, or wanting to. And this kind of thinking, that overgeneralization is not going to do it. The next one we're going to talk about is personalization. This one probably doesn't need a lot of explanation, but we personalize everything. We assume the look or the dynamics at work or an argument is entirely our fault and we're to blame, and someone's mad at us or hates us or thinks we're annoying. We personalize everything. And this makes sense that we would get there given all the criticism and correction and negative commentary we received growing up ADHD. Even if we are high achievers, overfunctioners, we probably still had moments where people were like, nah, your room's a mess. Or stop talking so much, stop interrupting, or maybe we had some social struggles. But whatever it is, a lot of us received additional criticism, complaint, and negative feedback. And so then we learn to mask. But Also, we learn to blame ourselves. I learned this quite young to just take responsibility because then it would avoid the worst conflict of people yelling at me if I just took responsibility for it. And it's not a bad skill to get good at taking responsibility for our peace and things. But this personalization cognitive distortion is about taking all of the responsibility and assuming it's your fault or assuming people feel a certain way about you when maybe it has nothing to do with you. This could even be if you're going for a walk around the block and someone gives you the stink eye that you assume that's about you. And it's not. And even if they're giving you the stink eye, it's about whatever they're thinking they know about you that they don't know. It reminds me of that saying that, how does that go? Other people have their opinion of you, and most of the time it's none of your business. So unless someone is going to communicate with you directly, we just can't be going out there and be like, oh my God, are they mad? Do they not like me? Or what they said must be about me. Instead, it's other people's responsibility to communicate with us if they've got a problem. Not that that doesn't mean we can't check in, but it also is equally ineffective in a relationship if we're always checking in and going, are you mad at me? Are you mad at me? Are you mad at me? Because that also then drives people crazy. Oh, it's a matter of being intentional with when we do those check-ins. And as we're going to talk about later, catching ourselves when we are personalizing things, blaming ourselves. Another common cognitive distortion that we do is mind reading. So we assume we know what other people are thinking. We assume that, oh, they think I'm lazy, or oh, they think this, or oh, they think that. And I got to tell you, as a therapist and coach who's sat across, really had a front row seat into the lives of many, I will tell you that rarely are people thinking about other people. They think about us way less than we would ever believe they would think about us. So more often than not, our mind reading is inaccurate. And it tends to be super anxiety producing if you're always assuming you know what someone's thinking about you or about anything. It can leave us ridden with fear and anxiety and just kind of on eggshells all the time. So again, not super helpful. Another common one I see is should statements. This is, well, I should be able to do this. And I hear this one a lot with ADHD women. Well, all my friends can, why can't I? Or even though my friends do this, this, and that, I should be able to do that too. And a lot of times the should statements can come from embodied or internalized neurotypical standards where we assume that our brains should work exactly the same way and be able to do exactly the same things. I'm not saying that we can't do as much and do things that neurotypical brains can do. We just need to do them our own way. So when we compare ourselves to, I should be able to do that, they can do that, then that shoulding on yourself, as we call it, which is a little bit cliche and annoying at this point, but that can be debilitating. Basically, you're shaming yourself for not being good enough when you're just doing things the way your own brain needs. So last but not least, disqualifying the positive. And I had Jesse J. Anderson on my podcast a few weeks ago, and he was actually talking about something similar. I can't remember what he called it, but success amnesia, that we have success amnesia. And that can be a piece of disqualifying the positive, which is that we're like, oh, well, that didn't count because it wasn't good enough, or not even remembering that we did something well, but oftentimes disqualifying the good things we do as not really important, or, well, that's not actually evidence that I've got it together or that I'm a good person, and not really allowing ourselves to lean in and take that positive feedback, take those positive experiences about ourselves and the things we do as a way to boost ourselves. So those are the 7 most common cognitive distortions of ADHD women that I see, but also, like, I asked ChatGPT to survey it, and that's what it came up with. And I will tell you, I legitimately see these. There are other cognitive distortions. You can look up anything on cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT, sorry, and it will list all of them off for you. But what I want to talk about now is what we do with them. So in cognitive behavioral therapy, there is a working with the thoughts, and I actually don't particularly find that effective in the long run. Yes, shifting our mindset can be helpful. And I did a lot of that in my early days with my own therapy. But what I found is it didn't stick much past 5 to 10 years. There came a point in my 30s where it started to almost wear off unless you're constantly practicing it. And that's because from an IFS lens, what I can tell you is that there are parts of you that are doing that work, but there are parts of you that are still holding the belief. It's still there. It's just that you have other parts who are like, no, 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 you're not going to believe that, just pushing that part down. And that works for a while. It's just that it's not an effective long-term strategy. So then what do we do? Well, CBT is a start. However, I actually recommend working with the parts of you who are bringing this up. So number one, though, before we do anything, we've got to notice that we're doing it. So I didn't notice today that I was catastrophizing until after the fact. Some of it is I'm tired this week. I didn't get really great sleep up at the cabin except one night. And since I've been trying to get everything organized with a busier week, so I haven't been sleeping as well. So then it tends to be a lot harder for me to catch things. I also skipped meditation today, which is unlike me. I don't know that I've skipped a day of meditation, even if it was just 5 minutes in, oh my gosh, like a year. But that was counterproductive because I would have caught the catastrophizing had I let myself slow down and notice. So when you catch yourself doing one of these cognitive distortions, as I've explained, then it can be helpful to pause and be like, oh, I'm doing this. This is a cognitive distortion. Name it. Say, oh, I'm catastrophizing. I'm overgeneralizing. I'm shooting on myself. I'm assuming that what they're saying is about me when it probably has nothing to do with me. All those things, right? I'm overly generalizing that I always screw this up. Whatever it is, name that you're doing it, and then see if you can understand why a part of you would do that. You don't have to like that a part of you is doing it. It doesn't have to make logical sense, but can you validate? Can you get it and validate that there's something inside of you that is doing this? And when I lean back into the story I shared today, I absolutely can validate that a part of me was freaking out and catastrophizing. I get that that part holds the memories of how miserable those clients were, probably still are. I don't have them on my caseload anymore, but just how miserable they are with Lyme. And so that legitimately scares me, and it's a valid concern. It's just that catastrophizing is not the most effective way to handle the problem because it actually led me to spiral for a solid hour and 45 minutes before I actually came to a solution. Where if I would have caught it sooner, I could have been like, oh, I'm catastrophizing. Okay, I get that. I get why a part of me would do that because Lyme disease is scary and ticks do carry them in Minnesota. It's not an unlikely thing to happen. It is tick season. So that makes sense. And the reality is freaking out about it is actually going to make it harder for me to make sure I'm safe. So I'm going to ask that part of me to try and give me some space so that my nervous system is regulated enough so I can access my thinking skills. Because remember, if you follow my podcast at all, you know that when we're in our fight or flight response, which you can probably feel that energy for me today as I'm going through all these things, just bringing it up because I haven't fully resolved that experience. I mean, I feel really good that it wasn't a tick, but even just reflecting on how I got into catastrophizing isn't fully resolved. So you might have felt some of that fight or flight energy coming off of me, that big energy as I'm sharing these. And so that is not a place where we can effectively solve problems because the only thing our brain, our body is focused on at that point is survival. So in order to even figure out a solution or have a solution come to us and know it's a good solution, we've got to regulate our nervous system, which is what we do. So after we validate that we get it, we take a moment, we take some breaths. You can do some volcano breathing, which I talk about at other times. You can go for a walk, although not ruminating about it if you're going to go for a walk. Doing something to get your nervous system regulated. And then from there, start to work with the concern. Okay, in my example, the concern was Lyme disease. Well, how can I confirm whether or not this is a tic? Rather than just randomly Googling images, which was not helpful and made me panic more because it didn't look like anything, but it kind of looked like things, I could have immediately gone to ChatGPT. I could have gone to the University of Minnesota Extension program because online they have all these things. I could have Googled ways to rule out if it was a tic or not. And then I could have, I mean, I did make a doctor's appointment, but that would have been a huge waste of my time. Plus, it was with a male MD, which, no offense to male MDs, I'm sure there's some fantastic ones out there. But just by his name, I could tell he was older, and I don't always feel super listened to by older male MDs. Generalization, I know, and that's just the reality. So I wasn't super confident it was going to help me do it, like by going. I think which is why I was still looking for a solution because I couldn't find another option. So had I slowed down, regulated, and then problem solved, it would have been much less of a freak out. And that's true of all of these. So if you catch yourself doing that all or nothing thinking, if you catch yourself saying, I always screw this up, or I can never, whatever, that's definitely a time where you could say, oh, you know what? I'm overgeneralizing right now. And even if you don't remember what it's called, you can say, that isn't always true, but I get how a part of me would think that. Because a lot of times a part of you is going to attach to that you always do it so that you can then prepare for you always doing it. It's much harder if we don't always do something because then we have to pay attention more to when we do it and when we don't. So there is some protection there. And so you can get it and then validate that and regulate, then problem solve what you're going to do about it. The same is true if we catch ourselves blaming ourselves or assuming we know what someone else is thinking about us or assuming that we should be able to do something just like everybody else when our brain is unique. When you catch yourself doing that, you walk through these steps of noticing, like catch that you're doing it, name it, see if you can understand and then validate that you do, and then work with it. Eventually, when we do that, we can get to a place of, or at least I get to a place of, everything is figure outable. I've always figured things out. I will figure this out. And also, I'm learning. All of this is learning and growth. And also, if you're a business owner, content creator, also everything is content. So when something happens and I don't handle it well, that's a great opportunity for me to share what to do instead with everybody else. Because yes, even though I'm highly skillful and know all of these things, I have my moments, especially if I'm tired and not in my usual routine after the week of a holiday. Transitions are tough for me most of the time. And so I know that these weeks can be a little more challenging. So even just saying that aloud, what's coming to me is, okay, when I am gone and settling back in, transitioning back into life, maybe that's a good time to be on the lookout for these cognitive distortions. With the last one of disqualifying the positive, again, you can do the same thing. Catch yourself being like, oh, it's no big deal, or oh, whatever. And just not really embracing your awesomeness. Again, be aware of it, notice it, lean in with curiosity. What's this about? Validate it, work with it, and see if you can get to I say see if you can get to this place because these are the two mindset shifts that help me the most. Everything is figure outable. You have always figured out everything to this day, somehow. And maybe not always to your liking, but you survived. So it's okay. You're going to figure it out. And no matter what, you're learning. Now, if you choose not to learn from an experience, that's okay because it will just come back later again. Sometimes it comes back later much worse, so it benefits us to try and learn when things come up. But if you can remember that everything is learning, it can be a lot easier. I remember specifically when I was going through my divorce, which I chose. Like, I didn't want to be married anymore. It was a hard decision because I was afraid of being alone forever. But I knew my marriage wasn't a fit for me. I was just like, well, it's kind of good enough, I guess. What if I never find someone who's who is a fit. And I didn't. And actually, that worked out way better for me than if I had. So just to be clear. But I remember sitting there in my wedding dress, because if you're going to grieve, do it right. So I remember sitting there in my wedding dress with my shoes and my tiara and with my cats. And I remember sitting there thinking, this is painful. And whatever happens, I'm going to learn something from this. I know there's something I'm supposed to learn from this experience, that I got married to someone who wasn't a fit for me. And that marriage actually, now I realize, wasn't a fit for me. And I was right. There was so much learning that came from that experience, what some people might think of as a mistake, because I was only married like a year and a couple months. So some people might look at that and be like, whoa, with all kinds of judgment. For me, I really sat with, I'm learning something here. And that is what got me through. All right. So this one was quick and spicy with big energy. I hope you got something out of it. I hope you took notes. And I just want to say, if you love my podcast, I would love it if you would follow or subscribe or share it with other ADHD women, because that allows me to help more people. And if you're ready to do some deeper work with me, I want to let you know there's a way you can do that. I have a program, Ascend, the ADHD Women's Mastery Program, which is for ADHD women, most of whom are professionals in some way. And it's not just a course that you have to do on your own, because I found that ADHD women won't do that. We've got full schedules. We a lot on our plate, tend to put ourselves last, and not always, obviously, that would have been overgeneralization. However, I noticed that was the pattern. So there are weekly live calls, there's a weekly body doubling session, and then you get either, depending on what you choose, 6 or 12 1-hour sessions of one-to-one work with me to work with some of these underlying parts that are having you get stuck in some of the ways that we talked about today, as well as others. And you can use that one-on-one coaching for whatever it is that you want. But I just want to let you know that's there. I'll put the link in the show notes. You're welcome to check it out and see if that might be a fit for you. If not, get it. You're welcome to hang out watching my podcast, or you can check out my YouTube channel as well for additional ADHD-friendly content. All right, y'all. Thanks for being here. I'll see you next time. Take care.